Chapter 1-7. Tick. 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 The sound of water droplets echoed in the gloomy passage, causing Kuroto to tighten the robes on his body unconsciously. He hated it very much. The dark passage in front seemed to lead directly to hell, always making him have all kinds of horrifying thoughts, but the one-eyed viper on his shoulder made him dispel the thought of turning and leaving. Involuntary. When he reached the end of the passage, Kuroto opened the door. Behind the door was a well-equipped laboratory with a figure standing inside. The figure turned around. It's Kuroto-kun. Hearing this hoarse voice, Kuroto's heart trembled, and he lowered his head quickly. Orochimaru-sensei. Orochimaru looked at Kuroto thoughtfully, and then said for a long time. This laboratory will be yours in the future. Feeling the real gaze of Orochimaru, Kuroto didn't dare to think more than necessary, and hurriedly bowed and replied, "Please rest assured, I will definitely work harder." Orochimaru looked away and glanced around the laboratory for a while. A bit of melancholy appeared in his eyes. "I may be leaving the village. For the future material, you can figure it out by yourself." "Yes." Kuroto nodded and said yes without any hesitation, while the one-eyed viper standing on his shoulder was lazily flicking its tongue. Finally, Orochimaru took one last look at Kuroto, didn't explain anything, just left with a body flicker technique. With the departure of Orochimaru, the huge and gloomy chakra that filled the laboratory slowly faded. Phew. Kuroto breathed a sigh of relief. Recently, the aura on Orochimaru's body has become colder day by day, and it seems to have a bloody smell. Even if Kuroto reports the progress of the experiment from a distance, he still feels extremely uncomfortable. Fortunately, this difficult day seems to be over. But after thinking about it, Kuroto was a little confused. According to the vague memory from his previous life, it seems that Orochimaru left Konoha after 4th Hokage's death. If Kuroto is correct, then because of some conflict between Orochimaru and Danzo, the information on human experimentation of the village children was leaked that led to investigation under 3rd Hokage's orders and further course of events. But Orochimaru's attitude and actions just now seem to indicate that he has already prepared a plan to defect and could be launched at any time. Where did the deviation cause Orochimaru to defect early? Is it because of me? After sorting out everything in the past, Kuroto still couldn't think of a reason, but Orochimaru's defection is a good thing for him after all. As for whether he defected actively or passively currently, he can't do anything about it. Regarding Orochimaru, Kuroto's feelings are obviously complicated. If it weren't for the asylum under Orochimaru, Kuroto knew that he would not have survived the 3rd Ninja War so easily. After all, 7 out of 10 students in the same period had already died on the battlefield. Even a genius like Kakashi almost lost his life on the battlefield, and when compared to students of the same generation from the Ninja Academy, Kuroto couldn't even match one of Kakashi's moves. Living in the Naruto world as a pathetic weakling is the biggest sin one could commit. It's been more than 10 years since he transmigrated here, but to this day, Kuroto still finds it hard to adapt to this ninja world full of killings. This is one of the reasons why he took the initiative to take refuge under Orochimaru, because when it comes to fighting talent, he is obviously behind his peers. During the battle, especially in life and death situations, his reaction is always slower than others. Sometimes, he really admires the ninjas in this world. Often, they have the ability to kill at the age of 6 or 7. It is commonplace to go to the battlefield at the age of 10, and then there are geniuses like Kakashi and Itachi, who have already killed countless enemies by the age of 12. It's simply unbelievable. Kuroto does not have this talent. Fortunately, he was born in the Hyuga clan with white eyes. With the help of the white eyes, he was able to live in danger and survive on the battlefield several times. But good luck will not always last. Seeing the students of the same period die one by one, Kuroto resolutely took refuge under Orochimaru. You have to survive first. Staying alive is the most important to be able to rise. Kuroto also has certain advantages over others. With good education in his previous life, his comprehension abilities are far superior to that of ninjas of the same age. Coupled with the natural advantage of having white eyes, he quickly stood out in the laboratory of Orochimaru. He was able to learn a lot of genetic technology under Orochimaru's wings. Maybe because of witnessing too many deaths. In the later period of the Third War, Orochimaru was obsessed with the mystery of life. The clearest explanation is that Orochimaru no longer cares about the 3rd Hokage, no longer adheres to the low moral bottom line, and started doing a large number of cruel and bloody human experiments. In addition, Orochimaru also developed a keen interest in woods, white eyes/Byakugan, and writing chakra eyes/Sharingan. Kuroto's active refuge made it easier for Orochimaru to study the secrets of white eyes, so Orochimaru is still doing his best to guide Kuroto. The two sides hit it off quickly, so there was the scene just now. Of course, the reason Kuroto dared to take refuge under Orochimaru was that he knew that it would not take long for Orochimaru's attention to be attracted by the forbidden techniques in the village, such as the Edo Tensei and the 8 Gates of Life, plus he has the protection of Cage Bird, therefore he did not worry that Orochimaru will directly conduct human tests on him. Yes, the Cage Bird is indeed protection for the current Kuroto. Or to be more precise, for all the weak and struggling Hyuga clansmen, the Cage Bird is not only not confinement, but a kind of protection. Because of its existence, the Hyuga clan has avoided many serious problems and there are fewer people that covet Byakugan compared to Sharingan. As for another reason for taking refuge under Orochimaru, that is Tenseigan. With his mediocre talent, besides attaining Tenseigan, he really couldn't think of any other possible way for him to turn over and take his destiny into his own hands. As for Senjutsu, even a once-in-a-decade genius like Orochimaru has difficulty to master it, let alone him. Otherwise, let alone the mediocre talent of Kuroto, even a genius like Niji died just from shielding Hinata from the debris of the 10-tailed attacks according to the memory of his previous life. The white eyes can indeed give the Hyuga clansmen an unparalleled advantage Genin, Chunin, and Jonin level combat power. But once power comparison reaches the Kage level or even the Super Kage level, the advantage of white eyes is not obvious. For the Hyuga clan who specializes in soft boxing, it is next to impossible for them to counteract the power of Uchiha Susanoo, the strength of the human column force, the Senjutsu, etc. Hyugas are really powerless when put into a confrontation against enemies of this level, so the Tenseigan is the only hope for the Hyuga clan to intervene in the Super Shadow level battle. This is also something Kuroto never forgot at the beginning of the journey. But it's not easy to evolve a white eye into a Tenseigan eye. In terms of blood inheritance, Hyuga Kuroto has almost no knowledge reserves, so to achieve this goal, only the scientific research madman Orochimaru can help him in the entire village. According to the vague memory from my previous life, Tenseigan eyes are an upgraded version of white eyes, and it is a top dojutsu comparable to the Rinnegan eye. As far as Kuroto knows, there are 2 ways to evolve Byakugan into Tenseigan. The first method is to use that bloodline on the moon, combined with the bloodline of the Hyuga clan on the earth, like the Otsutsuki clan, to evolve the Byakugan into Tenseigan. The second method is to merge a lot of white eyes. The first method was directly discarded by Kuroto as he does not have a method to go on the moon. As the first method is also not very hopeful for him. He is not from the main Hyuga family, nor could he get the white eyes of the Otsutsuki clan on the moon. And for the second method, because of the Cage Bird, the white eyes of the separated family will be destroyed instantly after being removed or the death of the owner, so relying on the clan alone will not make enough of the white eyes for evolution process. Both methods seem to be unworkable, but from the second method, Kuroto has a new idea. Regardless of whether it's a Byakugan or Sharingan, all blood inheritance boundaries are actually the concrete manifestation of genes. If you can't get enough Byakugan, can you not start from the genetic aspect and collect a large number of Hyuga clan genes? And then maybe fuse these genes, directly from the genetic level from the inside out to evolve Byakugan into Tenseigan? Based on this bold conjecture, Kuroto focused on learning genetic knowledge from Orochimaru. Through continuous learning and observation, Kuroto has made an amazing discovery, that is, there are 33 special gene sequences in all of the genetic combinations of the Hyuga clan. Through further observations, Kuroto also found that in different clansmen, from 33 groups of special gene sequences, the number of sequences in the active state is also different. As for Kuroto's case, only the 17 to 33 part of the 33 special gene sequences in his body is in the activated state, while the 1 to 16 part of the sequence is in the inactive state. The details he collected indicate that of the dozens of other Hyuga clansmen genes he collected are also in a similar situation, and only some of the 33 special gene sequences are active. This discovery further confirms Kuroto's guess. He even suspects that if all 33 special gene sequences in the body can be activated, then every Hyuga clansman can evolve Byakugan into Tenseigan. In an instant, this thought spread madly in Kuroto's heart. Thanks to the war, the Kuroto was able to collect a large of genetic samples of the passed-away Hyuga clansmen under Orochimaru's arrangement. After screening and comparing hundreds of genetic samples, he successfully extracted the 4 to 16 part special gene sequence in the activated state. Counting the special gene sequences that are activated in the 17 to 33 part of Kuroto's own body, what he lacks is only the first 3 groups of activated sequences, 1 to 3 of the 33 special gene sequences. Kuroto had collected enough genes of the separation, but none of the 3 special gene sequences 1 to 3 were found in the active state, so naturally, he set his sights on the main family. But the main family seldom went to the battlefield in person. Even if it was on the battlefield, they were under protection. It is definitely not easy for a ninja at the level of Kuroto to reach it. Therefore, he had not been able to obtain a gene sample of the main family. To this end, he had to ask Orochimaru to take action. Unexpectedly, Orochimaru did not reject Kuroto's request, but even for Orochimaru, as one of the 3 senins, wanting to steal the genes of the main family, it was not an easy task. Things dragged on for more than a year, and the experiment was interrupted. Although distressed, Kuroto knows that currently, he is just a small fly struggling to survive. If he wants to change his destiny, he can only find opportunities on his own and cannot put his hope on some sort of miracle. But when Kuroto hit his idea on Hinata who was about to be born, he never thought that this time when teacher Orochimaru bid him farewell, he actually sent a sample of blood and skin tissue from the main family. Kuroto thought in his heart, Orochimaru's defection should have happened not too long in the future, but he not only didn't mean to take me away, but he also sent me the test materials I needed urgently before leaving. What was his intention? What? Let me stay in the village with peace of mind and be his spy. Whether it was Orochimaru's recent actions or based on the vague memories of previous lives, Kuroto can conclude that currently, Orochimaru isn't very interested in Byakugan, and at this time Orochimaru also sent him urgently needed experimental materials. Obviously not to study Byakugan, but to assure him. Thinking of this, Kuroto secretly laughed at himself. The bird in the cage doesn't seem to be useless. Undoubtedly, the decisive reason why Orochimaru chose to keep Kuroto in the village was that because of the cage bird on the forehead of Kuroto, he no longer had the right to defect. If Kuroto defected, he could be disposed of easily through the cage bird, therefore Orochimaru was naturally not interested in taking away a useless corpse. As the experiment progressed, Kuroto discarded his chaotic thoughts and focused his attention on the experiment. The blood and flesh tissue of the clan sent by Orochimaru is very vigorous. If Kuroto guessed correctly, this is probably the blood and flesh tissue of the patriarch, and it is also the gene sample that Kuroto wanted most. Because the flesh and blood tissues are very fresh, the gene extraction process is abnormally smooth, and after comparison, he was surprised to find that out of the 33 sets of special gene sequences of Hyuga, 28 sets are in the activated state, and it also includes 1 to 3 special gene sequences that Kuroto needs most. There are as many as 28 groups of special gene sequences that are in the active state. You deserve to be the patriarch. Thinking of the strength of Hyuga close to the Kage level, Kuroto was relieved immediately. Hyuga, who is in his prime, is undoubtedly the strongest of all the clansmen. Such a powerhouse definitely possesses the best genes in the family, which is a reasonable thing. Throwing his emotions aside, Kuroto concentrated on extracting the 3 groups of special gene sequences in the active state he dreamed of. So far, all the special gene sequences in the activated state of 1 to 16 that Kuroto lacked have been collected. Whether I can change my destiny all depends on this. Rejoicing, expecting, worrying, hesitating, all kinds of emotions rushed to my heart, making Kuroto a little confused for a while. He wanted to scream up to the sky, want to vent the depression and fear that had been in his heart for so many years, but the one-eyed viper on his shoulder made him dispel all thoughts. After sighing lightly, Kuroto again discarded all emotions one by one. Immediately afterward, he calmly filled the extracted gene fluid into a small thermostatic bottle, then took out a scroll and sealed the thermostatic bottle inside. The defection of Orochimaru will inevitably cause shock in the village. To make sure that he is not implicated, Kuroto has a lot of hands and tails to deal with. First of all, this is the laboratory. He must completely clean up his traces in the laboratory, and even the traces of his experiments must be completely removed to avoid any possible attachments to the grapevine related to the special gene sequence fusion experiment he had conducted. The next day, during the early morning exercise, Kuroto heard the whispers about an attack on the patriarch, which also confirmed that the blood and tissue sample that Orochimaru sent him yesterday were indeed obtained from Hyuga Kuroto. Although Kuroto had his speculations regarding this, but the mere thought that Orochimaru can casually hurt the strongest ninja of the Hyuga clan, even if through a sneak attack, still made Kuroto quite disappointed in the Hyugas. Based on this information alone, Kuroto can conclude that it is not easy for a member of the Hyuga clan to reach the strength level of a Sannin even through rigorous practice and countless effort. Although not impossible, but the difficulty of the said objective is too high, unless of course, the talent is too damn high. What's more, when it comes to talent, Kuroto knows that he belongs to the mediocre category, which can easily be understood based on the number of activated gene sequence groups in his DNA. In the case of most of the Hyuga clansmen, about 20 of the 33 special gene sequences are generally active. And for strong individuals like the current patriarch Hyuga Hayashi, as much as 28 groups out of 33 have reached activated state, while there are also individuals like him with less than 20 groups in the activated state. Therefore, it is not very hard to understand that his talent falls in the below-average category among the clansmen. If he follows the general training program, then no matter how much effort he put, no matter how much training he goes through, no matter how much experienced he becomes by doing tasks, at most he can reach the rank of a special jonin. After that, his growth in strength will stop, and he can't afford to let that happen if he wants to survive in this war-trodden world. Regarding the specific details about the attack on Patriarch, the Hyuga clan didn't release the information publicly, they probably decided to keep it a secret. Kuroto can also understand the purpose of doing so. Most probably the Patriarch Hyuga Hayashi is aware that the attacker is Orochimaru, and Orochimaru's identity is not so easy to go against. Apart from being the most talented disciple of the third-generation Hokage, he is also a Sannin with Kage-level strength and a massive influence, truly a troublesome opponent to go against, not someone Hyuga clan would want to deal with if given other options. Therefore, the Elder Council of the clan must have concluded choosing silence in this matter. Orochimaru dared to take the initiative to attack not just any ninja but the patriarch of one of the major clan of Konoha village indicates that he is not afraid to reveal his identity. This must mean that he has most probably completed all the necessary preparations required for leaving Konoha, so his defection plan could be launched any time. This conclusion made Kuroto sure that Orochimaru was about to defect. Orochimaru's defection has both pros and cons for the current Kuroto. The advantage is naturally that he wouldn't be under such heavy pressure working under some like Orochimaru, but it also leads to a disadvantage, which is that he has now lost a solid backing that provided him protection, which he will lose. Moreover, once Orochimaru leaves the village, Kuroto will also be under heavy surveillance as one of the students of the said Sannin. People who knew about my involvement in human experimentation is only Orochimaru, at least the ones that are still alive after the Third Ninja War. So as long as he does not reveal my involvement, nobody should come to target me for that, and knowing Orochimaru, I doubt he would reveal it. Therefore, as long as there are no major accidents, the village should not have any direct proof of my involvement, apart from some possible doubts or speculations. Among many researchers in Orochimaru's team, not many have survived the Third War, and because of the special nature of Byakugan, his field of research was completely separate, therefore he didn't have much interaction with other researchers because of generally isolating himself in an independent laboratory. So, apart from him and Orochimaru, no one was aware of the experimental project he was in charge of. After again and again analyzing all the possible scenarios in his mind, Kuroto continued his daily morning exercise calmly, as if the upcoming storm to be brought by Orochimaru's defection has nothing to do with him. For the next few days, there were no major changes in the village. Konoha was calm as it should be, until finally on the night of the third day an Anbu in fox mask suddenly appeared at Kuroto's home and took him to a temporary Anbu base. The base was located at the northwest corner of the village, with a large area and very heavy security. There are about 7 to 8 elite Anbu teams on constant high alert, and these are the only ones that Kuroto can discover. After being brought to the Anbu base, he was escorted to a small single room with no furnishings. The room has a solid iron fence installed outside with an Anbu standing guard. These arrangements are more than just a temporary base or a temporary prison. Undoubtedly, if the Anbu under 4th Hokage are being so watchful, it can only mean that Orochimaru has officially defected either today or maybe tonight. With his Byakugan eyes, Kuroto observed everything in the temporary prison. He was able to conclude that he was neither in the first group of shinobis brought here nor among the last group, because there were people already here before his arrival and they were still being brought here one after another. Therefore his identity is neither most attention nor the least attention, which is just the perfect for him right now. The imprisoned ninjas, all Orochimaru's subordinates without exception. There are hundreds of people already here, and more ninjas are still coming continuously. Among these hundreds of famous people, there are several famous elites of the village, many jonins and special jonins. And there's nothing wrong with this. After all, Orochimaru was the commander of 2 great ninja wars. He had thousands of ninja following his orders. It is not surprising that there are hundreds of loyal subordinates over the years. After all, the village under war mobilization has tens of thousands of ninjas. If there are not even hundreds of loyal subordinates, then how come Orochimaru could compete against Namikaze Minato for the position of 4th Hokage? due to the presence of hundreds of shinobi's prison house was quite noisy. Not everyone like Kuroto knows or could guess the reason for being brought here. Kuroto could bet that even among Orochimaru's loyal followers many would be unaware of Orochimaru's defection, therefore they expressed great dissatisfaction for being kept under detention with even any reasonable explanation for doing so. It wasn't until the third generation personally made his appearance that the noise subsided. Although fourth generation Hokage Namikaze Minato has come to power, the third generation is still responsible for the management of many large and small affairs in the village, and even in the eyes of many senior shinobis third generations still holds equal or maybe higher power than the fourth generation. In the presence of the third generation, the screening work soon began. The first to be screened and cleared were undoubtedly the elite shinobis with high strength. The chunin that were promoted during the war period like Kuroto were not of the top priority, therefore ignored for a while. Although Kuroto was more than aware that shinobis like him that were, under special promoted to chunin in wartime do not have actual strength to that of a senior chunin, but he is still depressed over the fact that he was ignored for such a long duration. 3 days passed in a flash. After being detained for 3 full days, still, no one took him to the attention brought great dissatisfaction to Kuroto. Undoubtedly, the screening work is not progressing smoothly. Many of the shinobi under detention did not believe that Orochimaru, one of the legendary 3 Sanins, would defect, therefore they did not cooperate with the investigation and review. As for the idea of using torture of the detainees, the village elder's opinion contradicts. After all, it's a simple interrogation, so it is difficult to investigate who participated in the experimentations with Orochimaru, and who are the spies left by Orochimaru in the village. It must also be known that shinobi receive strict counter-interrogation training and have just gone through the baptism of a bloody war. Nobody here is a fledgling rookie who would start spitting information under little torture. So the idea of using torture is probably pointless. And still, if the torture is used, the implications are far too great. Here not just 1, 2, or 3 but hundreds of people are detained, and executing several hundred ninjas who played many heroic roles for the village following Orochimaru's defection wouldn't be a wise choice. On the 5th day of detention, village elder Shimura Danzo finally made his appearance at the temporary prison. Danzo personally visited many of the detainees one by one. Nobody knew what sort of conversation was he having with the detainees, but he took most of the detainees with him. It's not hard to guess that they are now going to be joining Root. There was no need to think about it. Kuroto can easily deduce this result based on the information he has on Shimura Danzo from his last life. If all the shinobi here cannot be investigated properly, in that case letting Danzo recruit most of them is a much safer option for the village than allowing such a big instability factor to roam freely. These ninjas in custody here have also understood their current situation in the village. Being loyal to Orochimaru for a very long time, they would not be accepted by the 4th generation Hokage in the elite units. Adding to the fact that Minato-sama is still very young means that he would stay in power for about 2 to 3 decades. Therefore he would be building his team of loyal subordinates. So, the route remains the only best option available for most people here right now. In the next few days, Kuroto received multiple chances and invitations to join Root, but he politely declined this opportunity. In his opinion, defection is a better option than joining the Roots, that specializes in dirty work and precarious actions under Shimura Danzo's whims. Fortunately, the people of the Root were also not very interested in recruiting Hyuga Kuroto, and left happily after being rejected. The village did allow Shimura Danzo to solicit quite a few ninjas under his custody does not mean he can extend his hands onto everyone. Therefore, Kuroto dared to refuse the offer as it wouldn't bring him much trouble currently. A week later, at the main entrance of the village, a young girl is carefully organizing things for Kuroto. From the girl's unique eyes, it can be understood that she is also a member of the Hyuga clan like Kuroto, and from her appearance, she is of a similar age as Kuroto. The girl's brows are wrinkled, indicating that she seems to be worried about something. Kuroto, who was looking at the remote Hokage rock, smiled and said, "Don't worry, it's just a normal change of defense. There won't be much danger, especially in the current peaceful period." The girl nodded slightly, then took out a new pair of goggles from her waist pouch and handed it to Kuroto. Kuroto glanced at the girl, did not say much, and just put the goggles into his waist pouch. In fact, from a very young age, Kuroto has worn goggles like Obito, except that the goggles he bought had darker lenses, kind of like sunglasses. His purpose in doing so was not only to protect his eyes but also to be able to hide his identity as a Hyuga on the battlefield to not get targeted for being a censor ninja. The other reason was to cover up the Tenseigan eyes he would be awakening in the future. After all, in terms of appearance alone, both Byakugan and the Tenseigan are too different. The girl is undoubtedly worried that the lens of his old goggles might have broken or will possibly break, and it would be very difficult for him to buy a new one while patrolling on the border of the Fire Nation, so she bought a new pair and gave it to Kuroto as a spare. At this point, a middle-aged ninja not far away waved his hand and signaled to everyone, "The time is up, we are setting off." Hearing this, patted the girl on the shoulder, "Yui, I'm going, don't worry too much about me, maybe I will be back soon." The girl's name is Hyuga Yui. Although Yui nodded to Kuroto's words, but the clear signs of worry on her face couldn't remain hidden. Finally, Yui took one last look at the Hokage rock at the far end and went back to the Hyuga clan grounds. This time Konoha village has again lost its top pillar strength. Orochimaru, a Sannin defected, and Jiraiya, another of the 3 Sannin, was responsible for following Orochimaru's trails. Therefore, Konoha was the biggest loser in Orochimaru's defection. So far, all the 3 famous Konoha Sannin that were the backbone of the village back in the Second Ninja War have left the village. Although Orochimaru lost village's support, but he also got rid of the constraints of the village. Shimura Danzo definitely had the biggest gain, as he incorporated most of the forces that were earlier loyal to Orochimaru into his roots. Kuroto even suspects that Danzo was able to obtain some of the results of Orochimaru's experiments on the human body and would have probably started doing some prep work to transplant Sharingan and Hashirama's cells onto himself. But all these losses and gains were not of much importance for Kuroto now. The village leaders have probably reached a consensus to send all the shinobis that were loyal to Orochimaru and haven't been incorporated into the roots like Kuroto himself will be replaced at the various frontiers. Simply put, they intend to send these shinobis away from the village. As for what exactly is the purpose of doing so, not yet known. Coming to the team leader's side, Kuroto took a glance at the members of the team he is currently part of. Including him, there are a total of 12 ninjas subdivided into 3 squads, with 3 squad captains each, responsible for leading the squad. One thing to be noted is that neither of the squad leaders was part of Orochimaru's subordinates, while all the 9 other members of the team were under Orochimaru's authority. This team combination itself made Kuroto quite alert regarding what he might be facing in this task. The destination of the team's trip was a border post at the junction of the country of fire and the country of wind. As soon as he left the village, his guard was on full alert as if standing in a war zone. This is not him being overly cautious or something, but a profound lesson he learned just a few months ago when he was attacked less than 10 miles away from the village. The entire team that escorted the wounded back to the village from the front line suffered heavy casualties. This is not a fuss about Hyuga, but he had a profound lesson. Just a few months ago, he was attacked less than 10 miles from the village. The entire team that escorted the wounded back to the village from the front line suffered heavy casualties. If not for the fact that support from the village arrived in time, otherwise he would have already been buried 6 feet under the ground with a sold name on the memorial tablet. The cruel ninja war has taught Kuroto many things, and these habits are difficult to change for some time even if the war is now over. And Kuroto wasn't the only one with such changes. The other ninjas in the team also raised their guard to full alert as soon as the team left the village. Kuroto glanced at the figure walking at the end of the team and sighed slightly. If there is anyone in the Konoha village who isn't going to believe that Orochimaru defected, then it is Mitarashi Anko, no doubt it. Overnight she became a prisoner from a Sannin's disciple, someone expected to be the pillar strength of the village in the future. After such long imprisonment, she was also dispatched to the border together with Kuroto, completely far away from the power center of the village. From her hollow eyes and sluggish expression, it is not difficult to deduce that she is still not able to accept that her teacher, one of the 3 Sannin, actually defected from the village. She had her faith in her teacher collapsed, which is something that may not be restored in her lifetime. Taking away his gaze from Anko, Kuroto took a close look at the other ninjas in the team. In the team, only the team leader should be a Jonin, while the remaining 11 including Hyuga Kuroto and Mitarashi Anko are all Chunin. It can be considered that this team has quite high overall strength as long as they don't encounter an ambush squad consisting of several Jonins, which is least likely to happen. Besides, the war has recently ended, so the probability of an enemy shinobi appearing in Fire Nation is very slim. Sure enough, as Kuroto expected, the team safely arrived at the border post without facing much trouble along the way. After arrival at the border post, the 12-member team was officially separated into 3 squads. Kuroto was part of Team Hyuga Kuroto, Mitarashi Anko, and Inozuka Oda, some unknown member of the Inozuka clan known for their Ninken. The country of fire and the country of wind are not bordered by small nations like the country of rivers or the country of rain, etc. The border post where Kuroto is located is responsible for guarding the border of about 40 miles. On the one end of the guard post is the edge of the forest, and on the other end is the endless sea of sand. For now, Kuroto will be having a boring life of patrolling in the desert. Time flies. 2 months have passed in the blink of an eye. All news about the village was cut off. Currently, Kuroto was isolated at the desert border with only daily tasks of patrolling, garrison work, and resting all day for most of his free time. During this period, he could feel that the team leader Jonin had been monitoring the 9 squad members who were under Orochimaru's command. Therefore Kuroto made sure not to perform anything that would lead to any kind of problem for him. He secretly speculated that such surveillance would not last very long. Even a village like Konoha cannot manage to keep hundreds of ninjas under constant surveillance for a very long duration of time, so there must be a period for monitoring. And sure enough, not long after, the village sent 3 more Chunin to replace the squad captains and team leader. At first, Kuroto thought that this was because the village had lifted the surveillance on them, and after some more analysis of the 3 newly arrived he concluded that these 3 were highly skilled and had a ruthless bloodthirsty aura around them. These 3 are definitely not some ordinary Chunin. Kuroto soon concluded that either they were part of Anbu under Hokage or maybe from the route under Himura Danzo. Does an ordinary border post like this one needs 3 Anbu members or roots members? The answer is self-evident, so Kuroto's thoughts spread. He wasn't aware of what exactly happened back at the village in the past 2 months, but he certainly understood that danger has come. Time does not wait for anyone, the Tenseigan awakening plan must be initiated immediately. In Kuroto's impression, Otsutsuki Tonari from the Otsutsuki clan on the moon seemed to have a long period of adaptation when he went through the evolution of Byakugan into Tenseigan. Because of this, Kuroto hasn't started the Tenseigan awakening plan as of yet. But the situation is different right now. Although Kuroto can't guess what exactly is the village planning to do him and the other 8 shinobis, one thing he can be sure of is that the danger is approaching. Taking advantage of the opportunity of patrolling alone, Kuroto came to a remote part of the desert that he had chosen long ago. Looking around with Byakugan for a while, and after confirming that there were no else in the surroundings, he immediately made hand seals, and summoned the one-eyed viper that Orochimaru had left to monitor him. Bang! With a burst of smoke, the one-eyed viper lazily crawled in front of Kuroto, and spit out a scroll from his mouth. Yes, this scroll contains the gene fluid that Kuroto hid inside the summoning space through this one-eyed viper. Kuroto also didn't have any other choice, because only in the belly of the one-eyed viper can Kuroto retrieve the precious gene serum through psychic summoning, anywhere and at any time. As for the possibility, whether it will be taken by Orochimaru, Kuroto didn't need to worry too much about it. Kuroto is so sure because, for a long time, he has been storing some messy test materials in the belly of the one-eyed viper. Orochimaru had also secretly checked several times and found that they were all worthless things. So he simply started ignoring all the things he stored in the snake belly. Also, Orochimaru has defected not long ago, and I am afraid that he is still entangled with Jiraiya at this time, so he will definitely not be so free to pay attention to the things Kuroto has been during this time. After taking out the gene serum that was sealed in the scroll, Kuroto's face became completely serious. There are too many factors and unknowns involved in the process of genetic evolution. This serum in Kuroto's hand may be the ultimate key to change his fate or poison that will kill him painfully. There are too many uncertain factors in the evolution of the genetic level. The genetic fluid in front of you may be the key to change your fate or the poison that ruins your life. Without in vivo experiments, there is no data, so Kuroto cannot even estimate the probability of success at the moment, but he has no time and can only bet on whether he can control his destiny in the future and whether he can live with dignity and get rid of the helplessness of being a pathetic weakling like he is now. Everything depends on this bottle of gene serum. Without hesitating for any long, Kuroto took a deep breath to calm his nervousness, and injected the gene serum into his body. Shit. Almost at the same moment, Kuroto yelled in severe pain. Pain. Biting pain. Heartache. Kuroto has been a ninja for so long, he believed he had a strong pain endurance or something, it would be impossible to shake him, but until this moment, he never knew that the pain can reach this point. Slowly, he started to feel that the chakra inside his body was disintegrating. Not good. The situation had been going out of his control, so he quickly used only the minuscule chakra to forcefully disarm the psychic summon to send away the one-eyed viper. Almost at the same time as the one-eyed viper was released, all his chakra veins collapsed, following which his body also begins to collapse, and he could literally feel that the cells in his body melting away. What in the hell? With great unwillingness, Kuroto went black and fainted in the desert. After a long period of staying unconscious, Kuroto finally opened his eyes, not knowing his current situation, only to find that he somehow managed to stay alive, and right now he was resting at the guard post. He didn't have any idea how time has passed since he blacked out. The current captain of the guard post, Nara Mitsui, stared at Kuroto, who regained consciousness, and asked coldly, "What happened? What made you faint during your turn in the middle of the desert?" Kuroto, who just woke up, was a little confused about his situation. Additionally, he didn't seem to have much energy left in his body due to body cell collapsing and rearranging. I don't know why," was all he could answer. Mitsui frowned hearing Kuroto's reply. He wasn't satisfied with it. "Did you encounter an attack? Who? Is it some sand shinobi?" Asked more detailed questions about the possible reasons for his blackout, but all was for naught. Kuroto finally shook his head, feeling tired from being asked continuous questions. Finally he said, "No one attacked me, it was my own body that had a problem. I seem to be sick." Since ninjas can also get sick, so it was the most feasible answer he could come up with his current situation, so as not to draw any unnecessary trouble. Ninja World works on several natural phenomena, and it is not too rare for ninjas with blood limits to suffer from strange blood diseases. Kimimaro and Itachi are typical examples of individuals that suffered from blood sickness, so even though Mitsui still had some doubts in his heart, but when he saw clear signs of weakness on Kuroto's face, he decided to accept the current explanation and didn't take the matter any further. After Nara Mitsui left, Kuroto did a full body checkup of his body. The violent reaction of body cells resulting in the collapse of tissues upon gene serum injection far exceeded than he could have ever expected. This fact itself made him realize just how much danger he went through to activate special gene sequence in his body. It is nothing more than a blessing to be able to survive. Although he hasn't recorded any detailed values and made any data analysis, but based on the fact that he did this experiment upon himself, Kuroto can deduce that his body was on the verge of collapse when continuous activation and recombination was taking place. If he isn't incorrect, then he went through cell assembling and collapsing countless times during the whole process. It is his luck that he survived such a desperate process. Kuroto thought with a long sigh of relief. Now that he was analyzing the process, he couldn't help but be frightened thinking about his resultant death if he did not get lucky. At the same time, he also understood that when it comes to genetic knowledge he is still just a beginner in the field. After calming himself down, Kuroto started analyzing the result gene serum had on him. Kuroto's body almost collapsed, which is undoubtedly a response to the activation of a special gene sequence in the body. In other words, the number of the special gene sequence that is lacking in the activated state, the body has to undergo activation and recombination the same number of times. Since he lacked 16 groups of activated gene sequence, therefore his body went through 16 reorganizations. Each set of activation and recombination is an almost set invitation to the gates of death, and Kuroto went through this process 16 times, means he touched the edge of life at least 16 times. It is really a fluke to be able to survive. But the results are also great, and maybe they are worth it. Now that all 33 special gene sequences in his body are activated, Kuroto can feel that his body is completely different from before, and this change is still going on. The clearest change is that he can feel the amount of his chakra growing at a very fast pace. Getting up from the bed, Kuroto came in front of the mirror in the room slowly. Lifting the goggles, he found that the original pale white pupils now looked much different. His pupils were glowing with bluish light, as if like stars in the night sky. These pupils looked so beautiful and mesmerizing with their royal blue color. So beautiful. Even Kuroto couldn't stop himself from praising the beauty of these eyes. The more he looked at himself, the more he felt attracted to them. Just as he leaned forward, trying to see more clearly, from a close range, but suddenly, a strong sense of dizziness enveloped him, and simultaneously he felt a sharp tingling pain in his eyes. After a while, this dizziness and tingling gradually subsided. Hyuga was slowly standing up while supporting himself through the wall. He understood that this dojutsu cannot be used during the adaptation period, even to make the simplest of observations an awakening, so he closed his eyes and put on his goggles again. Lying back on the bed, Kuroto couldn't help but think. Now that his Byakaigen has evolved into Tenseigan, he has to consider many things about the future, but for now, he has to safely pass the adaptation period as he is in a weaker state than otherwise, so he can't just be happy yet. He needs to find a way to survive this difficult period of adaptation, as the looming danger on him has not subsided yet. But he also has hope for the future because he has finally awakened the legendary Tenseigan. In the evening, Anko and Inuzuka Oda came to Kuroto's room to visit him. After chatting for a while, Oda suddenly smiled and said, "Kuroto-kun, this time you are got a little unlucky because of being sick." Kuroto was a little confused as to why would Oda say something like that, so he asked, "Why?" Oda explained, "The captain just assigned a special task for Anko-chan me. If it can be successfully completed, maybe we can be transferred back to the village, then I won't have to endure the sandstorm here again." "A special mission, you say?" Kuroto was really startled by the information he just received, but he didn't show it in his expression and simply wished Oda and Anko good luck. "I wish you success in your mission." For some reason, there was a bad premonition in Kuroto's heart after hearing about the special task, but as per the code of conduct of shinobis he can't inquire about the details of the task, so even if he had his suspicions he chooses to remain silent, because if it exactly the case he thinks it is, then it would probably be useless to express his opinion. Finally, Oda patted Kuroto's shoulder and said with a grin, "Don't worry, the village will not forget us excellent ninjas who have experienced wars. It will not be long before you will be transferred back to the village. Now you can rest assured. So focus on recovery for now." Kuroto had his doubts about whether that is really the case. Asked, he didn't have any proof, only doubts, so all he could say was, "Be careful on the task." After chatting about a few more topics, Oda and Anko left Kuroto's room and went to go on their task. In an instant, 3 days passed. In this adaptation period, Kuroto constantly went through many dizziness and tingling torture sessions, but this torture was also not without any benefit, because it leads to growth in chakra and body strength. Although he hasn't accurately tested it yet, however, Kuroto can estimate that the amount of chakra in his body at this time is approximately 10 times than before injecting the gene activation serum. There are no standards for the classification of ninjas. The standards of the genin, chunin, jonin, quasi-kage, and even kage will change according to different environments and eras. For example, Hyuga Kuroto himself, before the injecting gene activation serum he was actually a shinobi with the strength of just a senior genin, after all except the most basic 3-body technique, and standard Hyuga softboxing, he hardly knows any other useful techniques. But even so, he was promoted to the rank of a chunin by the village and led the team to perform several tasks and investigation missions. But in any case, a vague and universally recognized criterion still exists. A ninja who can perform E-level ninjutsu, or can use his own blood succession limit, is qualified for being classified as a genin. A ninja that can perform C-level ninjutsu multiple times can be regarded as a chunin. A ninja that can perform B-level multiple times, and be proficient in more than just one combat art including ninjutsu, genjutsu, taijutsu, or proficient in kekai genkai techniques will be regarded as a jonin. And kage tier is vaguer than any other rank. The best method would be to pick out one of the strongest ninjas in the village. Therefore, the concept of kage level strength is different in different eras. Since such vague means cannot give a solid idea, therefore the chakra volume has become one of the important bases for judging the strength of a ninja. Because of this, the chakra volume has become one of the important bases for judging the strength of a ninja. Although Kuroto's current strength is probably that of a senior genin, his chakra volume has already surpassed that of a low-level chunin, and is quickly racing towards the standard of a normal chunin. During 3 days of adaptation, Kuroto was barely able to use his eyes. Through careful observation, he found that his eyes became like azure-color crystal gem, shining with breathtaking brilliance, and people couldn't help but be immersed in it and hard to extricate themselves. At the same time, he found that the caged bird seal on his forehead still existed, but it seemed to have lost its effectiveness. Of course, the bird in the cage targets Byakugan and all the brain nerves that connect Byakugan. Now, the Dojutsu in the Kuroto's eye sockets are no longer Byakugan but the legendary Tenseigan. Therefore, although the seal of the cage bird has not been destroyed, it has still been solved and won't have much effect on him. The adaptation period of the Tenseigan lasted as per Kuroto's prediction. And not long after he was able to see familiar chakra that was quickly approaching the outpost. Without thinking about it, Kuroto hurriedly leaned on the wall and walked out of his room. After a while, a thin figure rushed into the outpost. This figure is no one else other than Mitarashi Anko, who went out with Oda a few days ago on a special mission. At this time, Anko's complexion was extremely bad, her face was almost bloodless, her body was covered with various scars, her breath was also very disordered, and she seemed to have experienced several life and death battles. Relying on the vigilance that was tempered in the war, when Kuroto judged that the person was Anko, he had already stretched his hand into the ninja bag around his waist and took out a kunai. Tenseigan under the goggles was also blooming magnificently. He searched for any possible trail that might be following Anko. However, after only a slight scan, Kuroto found that there were no trails following Anko, so he was relieved and finally relaxed his guard. At this time, the other ninjas in the post also surrounded them, either bandaging Anko's wounds or asking about the details of the attack on her. Kuroto, who was on guard on the side, relied on the incomparable insight of the Tenseigan to notice that when the team leader Nara Mitsui next to him saw the Anko, a strange expression flashed across his face. The expression seemed to reflect as if things didn't go as they should have. At this very moment, the doubt within Kuroto's heart was confirmed. In fact, he had thought of this possibility a long time ago, but he still wanted to deny it even if was quite sure about his guess. But now that his doubt has been confirmed, he has to stay on guard against the squad leader and team captain Nara Mitsui. On the other hand, Nara Mitsui's attention was on Anko, so he didn't notice Kuroto's abnormality and the change in Kuroto's guard against him. "Is the task completed?" Mitsui calmly asked Anko. Anko replied Mitsui coldly, "We were ambushed as soon as we arrived at the location of the mission. It was a trap. Oda died on the spot. I managed to escape back after hiding in the desert for 2 days." When Mitsui heard this, his face was a little unnatural. "Maybe the spy we placed among the sand ninja was exposed, so you were ambushed. I will report it to the village." After saying just that, Mitsui hurriedly left, and Kuroto didn't say anything, just silently lifted the Anko. As soon as they entered Anko's room, she suddenly asked Kuroto, "Are we abandoned by the village?" Anko is obviously not stupid to be accepted by Orochimaru as a disciple. These so-called special missions this time are full of loopholes, and she naturally noticed it. Kuroto helped the Anko dress the wound, and said, "Don't think too much about it. It is common for things to go wrong during the tasks, and you are still less experienced, so don't worry too much, just focus on recovering for now." Kuroto knew he wasn't fooling anyone, but that's all he could say to comfort her. Hearing Kuroto's words, Anko said nothing, and her face returned to the same numb expression she had most of the time during their assignment on this guard post. After dealing with Anko's injury and reconfirming that no enemy approached the post, Kuroto returned to his room. As soon as he lay on the bed, his expression became gloomy. He grits his teeth with all his strength and mumbled in frustration. "How can they do this with us? How dare they treat us as such?" In his heart, Kuroto has realized. Based on the conversation between Mitsui and Anko just now, he roughly judged that the so-called special mission Mitsui handed over to Oda and Anko should be to make contact with the spy that Konoha had planted in Sand Ninja Village. But how could the Konoha village give such a secret mission to 2 mere Chunin ninjas who are still under the screening period? It simply doesn't make any sense to do so. So Kuroto's intuition is correct. This so-called special task is a trap. The village may have really abandoned their old ninjas that were under Orochimaru's authority, and they are trying to clean them one by one through reasonable means. Is it Shimura Danzo? Sandem-sama? Or maybe Yandem-sama? The first target of Kuroto's suspicion is Danzo. Orochimaru defected early this time. There are many inside stories in all this matter, therefore, it is difficult to judge what role Danzo played in it, but there is no doubt that Danzo must have a big part. Judging by the thought process that since Shimura Danzo is the biggest beneficiary of this whole fiasco as a result of Orochimaru's defection, the biggest suspect is naturally him, who most likely prompted Orochimaru's early defection. As such, both Danzo and Orochimaru may have completely cut off their relationship, so it would be reasonable for Danzo to dispose off of Orochimaru's former subordinates who did not agree to join the roots. The suspicion of the Sandem-sama can't be ruled out either, because the Sandem-sama is the kind of person who can really do a lot of unbelievably stupid things for the so-called stability. This was the case when he didn't take any severe action in regards to the events that led to Konoha's White Fang to commit suicide, or the events that would be happening in the future as per Kuroto's memories from the past life. For example, to avoid a likely war with the Cloud Village, Sandem pressured the Hyuga clan to surrender Hyuga Hayashi under Cloud Village's demand. Let Uzumaki Naruto grow up under village's discrimination and abuse, and Uchiha clan downfall. Therefore, he is also a possible suspect. As for the Yandem-sama, Kuroto thinks he wouldn't do it. This is not just his faith upon Yandem-sama, but the fact that Yandem-sama were a civilian ninja. They have neither the support of their own clan nor from Sandem-sama. Therefore, Yandem-sama should not have enough power to complete these arrangements. At the same time, Yandem-sama doesn't need to rush to clean up the possible dissidents considering the advantage of Yandem-sama's strength and age. In short, no matter who is presiding over this purge behind the scenes, Kuroto has already become the target of the other party, so Kuroto knows that the danger is already over his head, and he doesn't have much time. Days pass by, and now a week after the attack on Anko event, Kuroto finally passed the Tenseigan adaptation period. The dizziness and tingling sensation disappeared completely, followed by a comprehensive enhancement of vision. Tenseigan gives the user all the abilities that Byakugan provides to its owner, in a much enhanced form. This is especially the case with subtle insight. Through just ordinary observation, Kuroto can roughly judge the enemy's next move through his chakra flow and muscle expansion and contraction. In addition to insight improvement, the other biggest change within Kuroto is the growth in his chakra volume. Kuroto estimates that his current chakra volume is roughly 45 to 50 times before injecting the Gene Awakening Serum. Such high chakra growth is simply frightening, to say the least. Kuroto also faintly feels that he has awakened some other abilities, but currently, due to being present at the guard post, he can't check them because he is not sure what kind of effect they might have on the surroundings. I'll have to somehow go to some area where my movements will not be under monitoring to have a complete understanding of my current set of abilities. Kuroto made a mental note. Suppressing his inner excitement, Kuroto continued to analyze the changes within his body after the completion of the adaptation period following Tenseigan Awakening. A few days later, finally, it was Kuroto's turn to be on patrol duty alone. On this day Kuroto was really excited to have finally got a chance to understand the abilities of the legendary Tenseigan. Phew. Standing on the yellow desert, Kuroto took a light breath and extended his right hand parallel to the ground. As soon as he extended his hand, he could feel the flow of chakra, he concentrated on the objective in his mind, and finally. Ha! With just a single thought, a strong force was exerted into the air with him as the epicenter, as a result of which the swarming yellow sand was blown away like a hurricane head-on. Looking at the resulting sandstorm in the distant sky that occurred because of him, left Kuroto's mouth was left half open in shock. Holy shit! This trick was comparable to Tendo Pain's Shinra Tensei and Bansho Tenin, and the principle is also suction and repulsion. According to Kuroto's memory from his previous life, Otsutsuki Tonari also used this technique. Since it is a natural ability of Tenseigan, then this technique will be called, Rain Will Push. Rain, from reincarnation which is the literal English meaning of Tenseigan, will term is used for most of the Tenseigan abilities and, push for repulsion, similarly Rain Pull for Tenseigan version of Bansho Tenin. Kuroto then tried Rain Will Push and Rain Will Pull to have a better understanding of chakra consumption and the effective range of the technique. As the initial excitement passed, Kuroto gradually discovered the shortcomings of Rain Will Push, that is, the effective range is only about 15 meters, and the further the distance, the weaker the effect. Kuroto frowned while struggling to catch his breath due to overexertion. Most of the attacking ninjutsu above sea level can have an attack range of more than 20 meters, and some can even reach 50 meters, and the killing range of throwing weapons such as kunai, shuriken, etc. can easily exceed 20 meters. In other words, once the enemy has opened the distance, it is quite difficult for Kuroto to control the enemy with a simple push and pull. With his current capacity at best he can use it to play some role in defense and interference. Putting the shortcomings of small attack range aside, for the time being, Kuroto who was still panting discovered another shortcoming of himself, and that is low chakra volume. Don't get wrong, his chakra has at the very least increased 40 to 50 times since awakening Tenseigan, which ultimately made Kuroto very excited, but now that he has used Rain Will Rush and Rain Will Pull several times, he was surprised to find that his chakra is almost exhausted. It is only now that he realized just how small his initial chakra volume was. Moreover, 40 to 50 times interfered with his objective judgment and made him wrongly estimate his chakra amount. Because his previous chakra volume was at the standard level of a low-level chunin, which is too mediocre, so even if it is increased by 40 to 50 times, the total volume is still not very exaggerated, only surpassing a high-level chunin. In this scenario, it's a far cry from his thinking to be able to use this ninjutsu wantonly, and in comparison to Otsutsuki Tonari, who could play with the moon as a toy after awakening Tenseigan, he is so far behind that he can't even begin to understand the difference. So regarding Otsutsuki Tonari as his standard for reference will only lead to mental attacks. Why is this? Where is the problem? Is my method of evolving the Tenseigan wrong? One question after another flooded Kuroto's mind. After being confused for a while in doubts, anxiety, and even panic, he finally calmed down, and after another thought, all the previous puzzles were solved. According to the memory of previous life, the only person who awakened the Tenseigan was Otsutsuki Tonari, so Kuroto subconsciously believed that as long as he awakens the Tenseigan, he would also gain the same level of strength as Otsutsuki Tonari. But then thinking about it, Kekai Genkai also gives a different level of strength to different people. The strength level with the same Kekai Genkai will vary from individual to individual. The same concept applies to Byakugan. There are many ninjas in the Hyuga clan that are much better than Kuroto. Similarly for Sharingan, when compared to Uchiha Madara, the vast majority of Uchiha are like salted fish. According to the story, Otsutsuki Tonari was the large descendant of Otsutsuki clan left on the moon. He was also a veritable genius, who had all the inheritance, knowledge, and records belonging to the Otsutsuki clan at his hand to increase his base strength to Kage level even when he didn't awaken the Tenseigan. After awakening the Tenseigan, it was a matter of course for Otsutsuki Tonari to reach Super Kage level strength in one fell swoop. The current Hyuga Kuroto is really not comparable to such a powerhouse. Kuroto's and Tonari's starting lines are not the same at all, so obviously it is quite unrealistic for Kuroto to awaken Super Kage level strength like Tonari, with just the Tenseigan. After comprehending this point, Kuroto relaxed. He then tried using other techniques but found out that he can't do so. He is unable to enter the Tenseigan chakra mode. So it is simply impossible for him to cut the moon in half as Tonari did or to use the truth-seeking orbs and other abilities of great power. Is it necessary to use hand signs to enter the Tenseigan chakra mode? If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.